Hey everybody, this is Mrmathblog. This lesson is problem solving with percents. Don't forget all your lessons can be found at Mrmathblog.com. Let's go to that site. It's been a while since I've went there. So here's Mrmathblog.com, and so this is a 6th grade link. So there's two 6th grade links. This is for my school district, and this is probably yours right here. So if you click that, if you're watching this video, it's going to be loaded right down there. Okay, so it's in the 6th grade one. All right, so here's our common core strand for our awesome teachers, and here's our question is how can we use the strategy draw a model? We're going to be drawing bar models in here to help solve a percent problem. Okay, so we have 3 examples here. Here's the first one. There are about 50 schools in the San Juan Unified School District. So far, Mr. Bullock has visited 16% of these schools. If he plans to visit all the schools in the district, how many schools will he need to still visit? Okay, so let's answer some questions here. Well, what do we need to find out? Okay, we need to find out the difference between all the schools and the amount of schools that he visited. Okay, so he visited 16%, and there's 50 altogether right there. So we got to find all the schools in the district, total 50. And the amount that Mr. Bullock already visited is 16% of that. So how are we going to use that? Well, we can draw a bar model to find the amount of schools that Mr. Bullock has visited, the 16%. And then whatever that is, we're going to subtract that amount from 50. Okay, so there's a couple of ways to find 16%. All right, so here's a bar model right here. And so this model shows that 100% equals the 50 schools right here. So we need to find out how much is 16% of that. And then whatever that is right there, the 16% of the 50 schools, then we're going to subtract that from 50 to get the other schools that he still needs to visit, okay? So he's going to have to visit this blank amount right here, okay? So 1%, you guys, remember percent means per 100. So 1% of 50 is 1/100th of 50. And of means time, so it's 1/100th times 50, which is 50/100ths, okay? And 50/100ths, remember when you're dividing by 100, it's the same as moving the decimal over 2 places to the left. So it equals 0.50. Okay, so that's 1%. So what we got to do is find 16%. So 16% of 50 is going to be 16 times this 1% because we're going to have to find 16%. So 16 times 0.5 is the same as taking a half of 16, which gives us 8. Okay, so Mr. Bullock has visited 8 schools so far. So we're going to do 50 minus 8, and that means he's going to still need to visit 42 schools right there. So Mr. Bullock still needs to visit those 42 schools. Okay? All right, so let's, how can we use estimation to show that our answer is reasonable? Okay, well, one way is 16% is close to 20%. Okay, and 20% is 20/100ths, which equals 1/5. And since 1/5 of the 50 schools is equal to 10, then we can subtract 50 minus 10 and get 40. And this tells us that our answer, which was 42, was a reasonable answer. Okay? All right, so it's close to 40 right there. Okay, let's try another one. So Larry has saved 65% of his money he needs to buy his new fishing pole that costs $24. So how much money does he have, and how much more money does he need to save to buy that fishing pole right there? Okay, so let's answer some questions. What do we need to find? Okay, we need to find the amount of money Larry has and the amount of money he still needs. Okay, and what information do we need to use? Well, the price of the pole is $24, and Larry has 65% of that. Okay, so how will we use this information? Well, we'll draw another bar model to find out how much money Larry has saved. So we're going to find 65% of 24. I'm going to show you a different method in this one. And then we'll subtract that to find out how much more he needs still to save to buy that good fishing pole. So I like to go fishing. I try to go fishing a few times a year. Anyways, my favorite place is called Shelter Cove. I love to catch a fish up there. Anyways, so here's a bar model that shows 100% of the $24, okay? So 65%, remember 65% is more than 50%, so 50% would be about right in the middle of this right here. So we just made it a little bit bigger. So we're going to first find 65%, and whatever that is, then the rest of it will be how much more he needs to save, okay? We're going to get a decimal answer on this, and I'm going to show you a different way than the textbook is doing on this, okay? They found 1%. I'm going to find 10%, okay? 10% of $24, we just move the decimal over one place right here, and it becomes 2.4 or $2.40 right there. Okay, so remember, we need to find 60%. So, I'm sorry, 65%. So here's 10%. 10% is $2.40. So 5% is going to be half of the 10%, which is going to be $1.20. Okay, you guys okay with that? All right, so to find 60%, we're going to take 6 times the 10%, so it's going to be 6 times the $2.40, okay? And so when we multiply those, I'll do that down here, so 6 times 0 is 0. And then 6 times 4 is 24, so we're going to have a 4 and carry the 2. You'll see I did that right down there. And then 6 times 2 is 12, plus 2 is 14, and then move the decimal over 2 places, so it's $14.40. Okay, now that's 60%. All right, so now what we're going to do is 65% is 60% plus 5%. Well, remember 5% is the 120, and 60% is that 1440, so we're going to add those together, and that's going to give us $15.60, okay? All right, so Larry has $15.60. He still needs $24 minus that $15.60, and so if we subtract that correctly, he still needs $8.40 on that, okay? All right, so does our answer make sense, and explain? Okay, well, yes, 75% of $24 would be 75 hundredths, or 3/4 of $24, and 1/4 of 24 is 6. So if we divide that by 4 is 6, so 3/4 would be 3 times 6, which is 18. And since 65% is a little bit less than 75%, okay, and 75% was $18, our answer of $15.60 is just a little bit less than $18. So yes, that seems like it's a reasonable answer. Okay, so explain how we can solve this problem in a different way. Okay, well, what we could have done is we could have done 100% minus the 65%, and that would equal 35%. And then we can find 35% of $24, okay? And so I did 30% plus 5%, and remember, 30% is 3 times 10%, and the 10% was the 240, and the 5% was $1.20, so we get 720 plus $1.20, which tells us that that gives us $8.40, okay? So if we subtracted that, that's how much he has left to save. So if we subtracted that, then that tells us that he would have had $15.60. That says $15.50. This should be 60 cents. So I make mistakes all the time. Okay. I'm sure your teacher does too. I do it every day. All right, so one more, you guys. So Lucia is driving to visit her friend who lives 240 miles away from her house, and she has already driven 15% of that distance. How many more miles does she have to drive? Okay, so what do we need to find? Well, we need to find the difference between the total distance of the 240 and the distance that she already driven. Well, she already has driven 15%. So what information do we need to use? We need to, the total distance is 240 miles, and she has already driven that 15% of the total distance. And how are we going to use that? Well, we'll do the bar model again to find the number of miles already driven and subtract that from the amount of the total distance right there. Okay, so here's our bar model that shows 100% of the 240 miles right there, and we're looking for 15%, okay? All right, so let's do the 1%, you guys. So 1% of 240 is 1/100th. There's our 1% of 240, and of means multiply. So 240 times 1/100th is 240 over 100, okay? Does that make sense? Okay, and then so when you're dividing by 100, we just move the decimal over 2 places, so it's going to give us 2.4 right there. Okay, that's 1%. All right, so 15% is going to be 15 times the 2.4, because 2.4 is 1%, so 15% is 15 times that. And so if we multiply 15 times that, I did that down here, 15 times 2.4, I did 15 as I separated it up into 10 plus 5. Okay, and so 10 times 2.4 is 24, so 5 is going to be half of that, which is 12. 24 plus 12 is 36, okay? So Lucia has driven already 36 miles right there, and she still needs to drive 240 minus 36, which is 204 miles. All right, you guys, showed you a few ways. I hope they make sense, and take care, you guys. Hope you're having a fantastic year.